the dusty streets of Green River. Wyoming had never seen a more pitiful sight than the trembling woman being led off the wagon that sweltering July afternoon in 1878, her face streaked with tears that seemed to have no end. Ryder O'Brien stood outside the mercantile, rolling tobacco into thin paper when he first saw her. His weathered hand stilled as he watched the traveling merchant, a greasy man named Curtis, yank the chain attached to her wrist. The woman stumbled, her worn boots catching on the wagon step, and fresh sobs racked her thin frame. Her auburn hair hung limp around her face, and even from 30 feet away, Ryder could see the hollow grief in her eyes. He had come into town for supplies, nothing more. His ranch sat 5 miles north, a modest spread with decent grazing land, and a small herd of cattle that kept him fed and clothed. At 32 years old, Ryder had accepted his solitary existence. The loneliness that pressed against his chest each night had become as familiar as the calluses on his palms. He had stopped dreaming of companionship years ago after the influenza took his mother and left him truly alone in this harsh land. But something about the woman's despair called to him in a way he could not ignore. Curtis was already shouting, drawing a small crowd. Fresh from St. Louis, young, healthy, can cook and clean. Who will start the bidding? The words made Ryder's stomach turn. He knew such transactions happened, had heard of women being sold to pay debts or by families too poor to feed them. The practice left a bitter taste in his mouth, but in these lawless territories, the strong preyed upon the weak, and women had few protections. "She is crying," someone in the crowd called out. "What is wrong with her?" Curtis waved dismissively. "Lost her family to fever. She will get over it. Strong back, good teeth." He grabbed her face, forcing her mouth open like she was livestock. The woman did not resist, only continued her quiet, desperate weeping. Ryder felt something crack inside his chest. He stepped forward, his boots thudding against the wooden planks of the walkway. "How much?" Curtis's eyes lit with greed. "For you, friend, $60. It was highway robbery, and they both knew it. Ryder had that much saved, money he had been setting aside for a new plow and fence repairs. He looked at the woman again. She had not stopped crying since he first spotted her, tears flowing in an endless stream down her pale cheeks. Her dress, once probably fine, hung in tatters. She looked utterly broken. 50, Ryder countered. 55, and I will throw in her carpetbag. Ryder nodded once, his jaw tight. He counted out the bills, earned from months of backbreaking work, and took the chain from Curtis's hand. The woman flinched at the transfer but did not look up. Her crying continued, a soft, keening sound that reminded Ryder of a wounded animal. "What is your name?" he asked gently. She did not answer, only sobbed harder. Curtis laughed, already mounting his wagon. "Good luck with that one. She has not said a word in 3 weeks." The merchant rode off in a cloud of dust, leaving Ryder standing in the street with his unexpected purchase. The crowd dispersed, losing interest now that the spectacle was over. Ryder stood there, suddenly uncertain. He had acted on impulse, something he rarely did. What was he supposed to do with a woman who could not stop crying? "Come on," he said softly. "Let me get you out of this sun." He led her to the mercantile, where old Sam Miller raised his eyebrows but said nothing. Ryder bought jerky, beans, flour, and coffee, then added a length of simple cotton fabric and a bar of lavender soap. The woman stood beside him like a ghost, tears dripping onto the floorboards, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Buck, waited outside. Ryder helped the woman onto the saddle, then mounted behind her. She felt fragile in his arms, all sharp angles and trembling limbs. He kept his touch respectful, one arm loose around her waist to keep her steady as they rode out of town. The journey to his ranch took an hour. She cried the entire way. His home was simple but sturdy, a two-room cabin he had built himself from local timber. A small barn housed Buck and his 2 milk cows. Chickens pecked in the yard. The property sat in a shallow valley with the Green River visible as a silver ribbon in the distance. Mountains rose to the east, their peaks still touched with snow even in summer. Ryder dismounted and helped her down. "You can have the bedroom," he said. "I will sleep out here." She looked at him for the first time, really looked, and he saw fear mixing with the grief in her brown eyes. She was younger than he had first thought, maybe 23 or 24. Pretty, despite the devastation written across her features. "I am not going to hurt you," he said firmly. "You are safe here." She opened her mouth, and for a moment he thought she might speak. Instead, a fresh wave of tears spilled over and she covered her face with her hands. Ryder exhaled slowly. "Let me show you inside." The cabin was clean, at least. He kept things orderly, a habit from his mother. The main room held a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, and his sleeping pallet rolled in the corner. The bedroom was small, containing a real bed with a corn husk mattress and a single window that looked toward the mountains. "There is water in the basin," he said, pointing to the washstand. "I will bring in your bag. Take whatever time you need." He left her there and returned to Buck, unsaddling the horse and brushing him down while his mind churned. What had he done? He knew nothing about this woman. She might be ill in the head. She clearly could not speak or chose not to. And the crying, that endless, heartbroken crying. But he thought of Curtis's rough handling, of the way she had flinched, and knew he could not have left her there. Evening came, painting the sky orange and purple. Ryder fixed a simple meal of beans and cornbread, setting a plate aside for her. When he knocked on the bedroom door, there was no answer. He cracked it open and found her sitting on the bed, staring at nothing, tears still flowing. "You should eat," he said. She did not respond. He set the plate on the washstand. "I will leave it here." That night, lying on his pallet by the dying fire, Ryder heard her crying through the thin wall. The sound was worse in the darkness, more raw. He wondered if she would cry forever, if this was simply who she was now. He wondered what she had lost, what horrors she had witnessed. He wondered if buying her had been an act of mercy or the biggest mistake of his life. The next morning, he found her plate untouched. She sat in the same position, as if she had not moved all night. Her eyes were red and swollen, but the tears continued. "You need to eat," Ryder said, more firmly this time. "I do not know what you have been through, but starving yourself will not fix it." No response, just crying. He tried again at midday, bringing fresh bread and butter. She ignored it. By evening, frustration was beginning to crack through his concern. He had work to do, cattle to tend, but he found himself hovering near the cabin, checking on her every hour. "Look," he said, pulling the chair from his table into the bedroom. "I know you are hurting. I can see that clear as day. But you are going to waste away to nothing if you do not eat." She turned her face away, tears streaming. "Fine." He stood, running a hand through his dark hair. "I will leave it here, but I am not going to watch you die." 3 days passed. She cried. She did not eat. Ryder felt helplessness turning to desperation. He had saved her from whatever life Curtis would have sold her into, but she was dying anyway, slowly, from grief. On the 4th morning, he made a decision. He entered her room without knocking, set a bowl of oatmeal on the bed and sat down beside it. "My name is Ryder O'Brien," he said quietly. "I am 32 years old. This ranch has been in my family for 12 years. My father died when I was 15, kicked by a horse. My mother passed 6 years ago, influenza. I have been alone since then." She did not look at him, but the quality of her crying changed slightly, becoming less consuming. "I am not much for talking," he continued. Get used to the quiet pretty quick when you live alone. But I figure you might want to know who I am, seeing as you are here now." He picked up the spoon, filled it with oatmeal, and held it near her. "Please." For a long moment, nothing. Then, so slowly he almost missed it, she leaned forward and accepted the spoon. She swallowed, then immediately began sobbing again, but he counted it as a victory. He fed her the entire bowl, one spoon at a time, while she cried and cried. Afterwards, he said, "There is a dress length I bought in town, and soap. The wash basin has fresh water. I will be outside if you need anything." Over the next week, a routine developed. Ryder worked the ranch during the day, mending fences, tending his small herd, maintaining his property. 3 times a day he brought food to the woman. Sometimes she ate on her own. Sometimes he had to coax her. She never stopped crying. He began talking to her, filling the silence with stories from his life. He told her about learning to ride, about his mother's garden, about the hard winter of '73 when he nearly lost everything. He did not know if she heard him, but he kept talking anyway. One evening, 2 weeks after bringing her home, he came in from working to find her standing in the main room. She wore the dress he had bought, had washed her hair. She was still crying, but she had left the bedroom. "Hey," he said softly, setting down his tools. "You look nice." She wrapped her arms around herself, tears dripping onto the clean fabric. Ryder moved slowly, approaching like she was a frightened deer. "Would you like to sit? I could make coffee." To his surprise, she nodded. They sat at his table, drinking coffee while the sun set. She cried into her cup. He pretended not to notice. "I was thinking," Ryder said carefully, "that it might be good to know your name if you are willing to tell me." She set down her cup with shaking hands. Her mouth opened, closed. Finally, in a voice hoarse from disuse, she whispered, "Willa. Willa Vance." The sound of her voice, broken and small, hit him square in the chest. "Willa," he repeated. "That is a good name." Fresh sobs racked her body, and he instinctively reached across the table, covering her hand with his. She did not pull away. "I am glad you are here, Willa," he said. "I know you are not yet. But I am." She cried until the stars came out, but her hand stayed in his the entire time. The next morning, Ryder found Willa in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast. She had burned the biscuits and made the coffee too weak, and tears poured down her face as she stared at the mess. "It is all right," he said quickly. "I am not much of a cook either. We will figure it out together." He showed her how to work the temperamental stove, how to judge when the coffee was done. She listened through her tears, nodding occasionally. By the end, they had produced an edible meal. It was not much, but it felt like progress. Days turned into weeks. Willa cried constantly, but slowly, incrementally, she began to engage with life. She fed the chickens, collected eggs, attempted to make meals. Everything made her weep, but she kept trying. Ryder found himself watching her more than he should, noticing small things. The way sunlight caught in her auburn hair, the delicate bones of her wrists, the rare moments when her crying quieted to soft sniffles and something almost like peace crossed her face. He wanted to know her story, but he did not push. She had given him her name. The rest would come when she was ready. One afternoon in late August, Ryder was repairing the henhouse when he heard a shriek. He dropped his hammer and ran toward the cabin, heart pounding. Willa stood in the doorway, staring at something in the dirt. She was crying, as always, but pointing frantically. He followed her finger and saw a snake, a harmless bull snake, coiled near the step. "It is all right," he said, moving past her. "It is not poisonous. Actually helpful, keeps the mice down." He gently relocated the snake to the tall grass, then returned to find Willa watching him with wide eyes, tears streaming. "You are afraid of snakes?" he asked. She nodded, sobbing. Without thinking, he pulled her into a hug. She stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against him, crying into his chest. He held her carefully, one hand on her back, letting her fall apart. "You are safe," he murmured. "I promise, Willa, you are safe here." They stood like that for a long time. When she finally pulled back, her eyes met his, and he saw something new there. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. September brought cooler weather and the need to prepare for winter. Ryder worked longer hours, cutting wood, salting meat, checking the cabin for gaps that would let in cold. Willa helped as much as she could, her crying a constant backdrop to their labor. One evening, as they stacked wood, she spoke. "My family," she said, her voice still rough, "died in April. Fever swept through St. Louis. My parents, my 3 younger siblings, gone in a week." Ryder stopped working, giving her his full attention. "I had nothing," she continued, tears flowing freely. "No money, no other family. I thought I could find work, but no one would hire me." I could not stop crying. A bitter, broken laugh. "Still cannot." "You do not have to explain," Ryder said gently. "A man offered to help." Her hands clenched. "Said he knew someone who could give me a job, a fresh start. I was so desperate, but he sold me to Curtis instead. I have been sold 3 times since then. You are the 4th. Rage burned in Ryder's chest, hot and sudden. "I am sorry, that should never have happened to you. You bought me," she said, meeting his eyes. "Why? What do you want from me?" The question hung between them. Ryder set down the wood he was holding and brushed off his hands. "Honestly, I saw you crying and I could not walk away. You looked like something inside you was dying. I thought maybe if you were somewhere safe it might hurt less." "But what do you want?" she pressed. "Men do not just buy women out of kindness." "I want you to stop crying," he said simply. "Not because it bothers me, but because I hate seeing you in so much pain. I want you to smile again, Willa. That is all." She stared at him for a long moment, tears streaming, then looked away. "I do not think I remember how." "Then I will just have to remind you." The words came out before he could stop them, a promise he had no idea how to keep. But looking at her, at this broken woman who was slowly becoming part of his life, he meant them with everything he had. Winter arrived early that year, snow falling in October. Ryder taught Willa to milk the cows, to churn butter, to darn socks. She taught him nothing because she had nothing to teach, but her presence transformed the cabin from a shelter into something that felt like a home. She still cried constantly, upon waking, while cooking, during meals, before sleep. But the quality of the crying had changed. It was softer now, less consuming. She could function through it, could work and listen and occasionally respond. Ryder found himself doing small things to try to ease her pain. He brought her wildflowers he found on the range. He told terrible jokes he barely remembered from his youth. He played harmonica in the evenings, simple tunes his mother had taught him. Nothing stopped the tears, but sometimes, just sometimes, he thought he saw something almost like appreciation in her eyes. The first real snow came in November, blanketing everything in white. Ryder woke to find Willa standing at the window, crying as she watched the flakes fall. "Do you like snow?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "I do not know any more," she whispered. "My sister loved it. Emma, she was 8. She would have been 9 this month." Her voice broke and Ryder ached for her. He wanted to fix this, to somehow stitch back together the pieces of her shattered heart, but he did not know how. "Tell me about her," he said instead. So she did. She told him about Emma, and then about her brother Thomas and baby sister Claire. About her father's bookshop and her mother's singing. She talked through tears, painting pictures of a life that was gone, and Ryder listened to every word. When she finally finished, voice hoarse and eyes swollen, she looked at him. "Thank you for listening." "Always," he promised. December arrived with bitter cold. Ryder and Willa spent most days inside, staying close to the fire. He taught her to play checkers, though she cried the entire time. They read together from his small collection of books, passing volumes back and forth. One evening, as a blizzard howled outside, Willa looked up from her mending. "Why are you not married?" she asked suddenly. Ryder glanced up from oiling his tack. "Never found the right woman, I guess. This is a hard life, hard land. Most women want something easier." "Is it lonely?" "Yes," he said honestly. "Very." She was quiet for a moment, tears tracking down her face. "I am sorry I cry so much. I know it must be difficult living with someone so broken." "You are not broken," Ryder said firmly. "You are grieving. There is a difference. It has been 8 months, so—" "Grief does not have a schedule, Willa." She met his eyes, and something passed between them, something warm and fragile. "You are a good man, Ryder O'Brien." His heart kicked hard against his ribs. "I am just doing what is right." "No," she said softly. "You are doing more than that. You have been kind when you did not have to be. Patient when most men would have thrown me out. You have never demanded anything from me." "I will never demand anything from you," he said. "You are not property, no matter what that transaction looked like. You are a person, and you deserve to be treated like one." Fresh tears spilled over, but she smiled. It was tiny, gone in a heartbeat, but it was there. A real smile. Ryder felt like he had just witnessed the sun break through storm clouds. Christmas came quietly. Ryder surprised Willa with a present, a small carved bird he had made in secret during his evening hours. She held it in trembling hands, crying as she traced the details. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "I am not much of a carver," he said, suddenly embarrassed, "but I thought you might like it." She threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her close, breathing in the lavender scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against his. Something was changing between them. He felt it in the way she sought him out, in how she stood closer than necessary, in the moments when their hands would brush and neither would pull away. He was falling for her. Had been falling for months, probably since that first night when he heard her crying through the wall and wanted nothing more than to ease her pain. But he did not know if she could feel the same way. She was still deep in her grief, still crying constantly, and he had bought her. That fact sat heavy in his chest. How could anything real develop from such a beginning? January brought a thaw, then more snow. February was brutal, with temperatures dropping so low they had to bring the chickens inside. Through it all, Ryder and Willa worked together, surviving, existing, slowly becoming something more than strangers. One night, Willa woke screaming. Ryder bolted from his pallet, rushing to her room. He found her sitting up in bed, sobbing uncontrollably. "Nightmare?" he asked gently. She nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Without thinking, he sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, shaking, crying into his chest. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. "They were all there," she gasped. "My family. They were asking why I left them. Why I survived when they died." "Willa, no." He cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. "It was not your fault. You surviving is not a betrayal." "Then why does it feel like one?" "Because you love them. Because grief is not logical." He brushed tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. "But they would want you to live, Willa, to be happy. You know that." "I do not know how anymore," she sobbed. "Then let me help you remember." He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, tasting salt. When his lips finally found hers, it was soft, tentative, asking permission. She responded, kissing him back with desperate intensity, hands fisting in his shirt. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, she was still crying, but something had shifted in her expression. "I am falling in love with you," he said, the words tumbling out. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you might not be ready, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it." "Ryder," she whispered, fresh tears flowing. "I do not know if I can be what you need. You already are. You, exactly as you are, crying and broken and beautiful. That is what I need." She kissed him again, harder this time, and he felt her tears mixing with his own. When had he started crying? He did not know, did not care. "Stay with me," she whispered against his lips. "Tonight. I do not want to be alone." He stayed, holding her through the night while she cried herself to sleep in his arms. It was not improper because neither of them had anything but comfort on their minds. He just held her, protected her from her dreams, and felt something long dead in his chest flicker back to life. Spring came slowly to Wyoming, the snow melting in patches. Willa still cried every day, but now she cried in Ryder's arms. They had crossed some invisible line that night in February, and neither wanted to go back. They were not intimate, not yet, but they were together. She kissed him good morning and good night. He held her hand while they walked the property line. They sat close in the evenings, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I need to tell you something," Willa said one April morning, tears streaming as always. Ryder set down his coffee, giving her his attention. "I am not crying because I am sad anymore," she said slowly. "I mean I am sad. I will always miss them. But the crying, it has become habit. I do not know how to stop." "You do not have to stop," he said. "Not for me." "But I want to," she insisted. "I want to laugh again, Ryder. I want to feel joy without this constant weight. I just do not remember how." He thought for a moment, then stood, holding out his hand. "Come with me." He led her outside into the warm spring sunshine. Wildflowers were starting to bloom across the range, patches of yellow and purple against the brown grass. "You remember the last time you laughed?" he asked. She thought, tears flowing. "My father. He was terrible at jokes, but he told them anyway. The worse they were, the harder we laughed. Tell me one." "Ryder, I cannot just tell me the worst joke your father ever told." She wiped her eyes, thinking. "All right." He said, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" "Why? To get to the other side." She said it deadpan, and Ryder burst out laughing. "That is terrible, I know." And then, like a miracle, Willa laughed. It was small, choked by tears, but it was real. "It is so stupid." Ryder grabbed her hands, grinning like a fool. "Do you hear that? You are laughing." "I am crying too," she said, but she was also smiling, tears and laughter mixing together. "I do not care. You laughed, Willa. That is what matters." They stood in the spring sunshine, and she laughed and cried and smiled all at once, and Ryder thought he had never loved anything more than this moment. The laughter did not fix everything, but it cracked something open. Over the following weeks, Willa laughed more often. Still crying, always crying, but also finding moments of joy. She laughed when Ryder fell in the mud. She laughed at his terrible harmonica playing. She laughed at absolutely nothing, just because she could. In May, Ryder took her into Green River for the first time since her arrival. She was nervous, crying harder than usual, but she held his hand and did not falter. People stared. Everyone knew he had bought her, knew she was the crying woman. But Ryder introduced her proudly as Willa Vance, and something in his tone discouraged questions. They bought supplies, had lunch at the small restaurant, and walked through town. By the end, Willa was exhausted but smiling through her tears. "That was not so bad," she said on the ride home. "You were brave," Ryder told her. "I had you with me. That made it easier." His heart swelled. "I will always be with you, Willa, if you want me." She kissed him right there on Buck's back, not caring who might see. "I want you. I think I have wanted you for a long time." That night, they made love for the first time. Slow and tender, Willa crying through all of it but also smiling, also gasping his name. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, tears soaking his chest. "I love you," she whispered. "I did not think I could love anything again, but I love you." "I love you too," he said, kissing her hair. "More than I thought possible." "Will you marry me?" she asked suddenly. "Properly. I know we have been living as husband and wife, but I want it to be real." Ryder pulled back to look at her. "You want to marry me?" "Yes." Tears poured down her face, but her eyes were bright. "You spent months making me feel human again. You never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. I want to be your wife, Ryder. Really, truly your wife." "Then yes," he said, grinning. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in June by the circuit preacher who came through Green River. Willa wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue calico. Ryder wore his cleanest shirt and his father's old string tie. She cried through the entire ceremony, but she also smiled, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, she laughed. Sam Miller and his wife stood as witnesses, along with a few other townspeople. It was simple, nothing fancy, but to Ryder it was perfect. That night in their bed as man and wife, Willa touched his face. "Thank you for saving me. You saved yourself," he said. "I just gave you a safe place to do it. We saved each other then. I think you were just as lost as I was." She was right. He had been lost, drowning in loneliness, going through the motions of life without really living. She had changed that, given him purpose, given him love. The first year of their marriage was not without struggles. Willa still cried every day, sometimes for hours. She had nightmares that left her shaking and inconsolable. But there were also good days, days filled with laughter and tenderness. Ryder continued his work on the ranch, and Willa proved herself invaluable. She learned to handle the livestock, to work the garden, to manage the household. She was strong, much stronger than she looked. In October, Willa realized she was pregnant. She told Ryder while crying as usual, but her tears were mixed with joy. "A baby," he breathed, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" She asked anxiously. "Happier than I have been in my entire life." Their son was born in May of 1880, during a spring thunderstorm. Willa labored for 14 hours, crying the entire time, but when the midwife placed the squalling infant in her arms, her tears turned to laughter. "He is perfect," she sobbed, counting tiny fingers and toes. Ryder sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, staring at his son in wonder. "What should we name him?" "Thomas," Willa said immediately. "After my brother." "Thomas O'Brien," Ryder tested. "I like it." They were exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely in love. With their son, with each other, with the life they were building. Thomas was a healthy baby, loud and demanding. Willa still cried daily, but now she cried while nursing, while changing diapers, while singing lullabies. Her tears had become simply part of who she was, and Ryder had long since stopped noticing them. When Thomas was 6 months old, Willa approached Ryder with an idea. "I want to start a garden," she said. "A big one with vegetables and flowers, something that grows and thrives." "Like you," Ryder said, kissing her temple. "Like us," she corrected. They spent the next spring creating the garden, turning over soil, planting seeds. Willa cried while she worked, but she also sang. Songs her mother had taught her, songs from her childhood. The sound filled the valley, beautiful and haunting. By summer, the garden was thriving. Tomatoes, beans, squash, carrots, and flowers everywhere, bright splashes of color against the brown landscape. Willa spent hours there, Thomas playing in the dirt beside her, and Ryder would often stop work just to watch them. Life fell into a rhythm. The ranch prospered. Thomas grew. Willa still cried, but she also laughed and loved and lived. In the fall of 1881, Willa became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder. She was sick constantly, tired all the time. But she never complained, just cried and kept going. Their daughter was born in March of 1882 during a late snowstorm. The labor was faster this time, only 6 hours. When the midwife announced, "It is a girl," Willa burst into tears, as did Ryder. Emma, Willa said, touching the baby's soft cheek. Her name is Emma. Ryder understood. It was both tribute and healing, naming their daughter after the sister Willa had lost. It was not replacing, but honoring. Remembering. Emma was a calm baby, content to watch the world with wide eyes. Thomas, now almost 2, was fascinated by his little sister. The cabin rang with children's laughter, with Willa's crying and singing, with the sounds of family. One evening, when Emma was a few months old, Ryder found Willa sitting outside watching the sunset. Tears streamed down her face as always, but she looked peaceful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Everything," she said. "How lost I was, how much you have given me." "You have given me just as much," she leaned into him. "I never thought I would be happy again. I thought that part of me died with my family. And now I know that was not happiness dying. It was my old life ending. I am happy now, Ryder, despite the tears, despite everything. I am truly happy." He kissed her, tasting salt and joy. "Good, that is all I have ever wanted." The years rolled on. The ranch expanded as Ryder bought neighboring land from a retiring homesteader. Thomas grew into a lively boy, helping with chores and getting into mischief. Emma was quieter, thoughtful, always watching. In 1885, Willa became pregnant for the 3rd time. She was 32 now, Ryder 39. They had not planned for another child, but they welcomed the surprise. This time, Willa's crying increased during the pregnancy. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming emotion. Happy tears, she called them, though Ryder could not tell the difference. She cried while cooking, while playing with Thomas and Emma, while lying in his arms at night. "I love this life so much it scares me," she admitted one night. "What if I lose it all again?" "You will not," Ryder promised. "I am not going anywhere. The children are healthy. We are all here and we are all staying." "You cannot promise that." "No," he agreed. "But I can promise that whatever comes, we will face it together." Their second son was born in February of 1886, a robust baby with Ryder's dark hair and Willa's brown eyes. They named him James, and he completed their family. Willa still cried every day. It had been 8 years since Ryder first saw her, 8 years of tears. But now the crying was just part of their life, like breathing. The children grew up thinking it was normal for their mother to cry constantly. Ryder had long since accepted it as simply who she was. In 1888, when Thomas was 8 and Emma 6 and James 2, a traveling photographer came through Green River. On impulse, Ryder loaded the family into the wagon and took them to town. The photographer set up his camera, arranging them carefully. Ryder sat in the center, Willa beside him, the children arranged around them. Willa was crying, of course, tears streaming down her face, but she was also smiling. "Hold very still," the photographer instructed. They froze and the camera captured them. A family, imperfect but complete. Later, when the photograph was developed, Ryder stared at it in wonder. There they were, preserved forever. Willa's tears were visible, caught midstream, but so was her smile. So was the love in her eyes as she looked at their children. "We look happy," she said, crying as she studied the image. "We are happy," Ryder corrected, and they were. Despite hardships, despite Willa's endless tears, despite the harsh land and difficult life, they had built something beautiful together. The years continued to pass. Thomas grew tall and strong, taking on more ranch work. Emma showed an aptitude for reading and numbers, spending hours with the few books they owned. James was the adventurous one, always exploring, always getting into trouble. Ryder watched his children grow and felt blessed beyond measure. This life, this family, had been born from one impulsive decision on a dusty street in Green River. He had seen a woman crying and decided to help, never imagining where that choice would lead. In the summer of 1890, 12 years after their first meeting, Ryder and Willa stood in her garden, watching the children play. She was crying, as always, but laughing too as James chased his older siblings with a frog. "You remember when you said you wanted to make me smile?" Willa asked. "I remember everything about those early days. You succeeded, you know. You spent your life making me smile just like you promised." Ryder pulled her close. "You smile every day now. Because of you. Because you saw something worth saving when everyone else just saw a broken woman." "I saw you," he said simply, "and I fell in love." She turned in his arms, tears streaming but eyes bright. "I am still broken, you know, still cry every day, still have nightmares, still carry the grief. I know. And you still love me more every day." She kissed him, deep and long, tasting of tears and forever. When they pulled apart, the children were making exaggerated gagging sounds, and they both laughed. This was their life. Messy and beautiful, filled with tears and laughter, with hard work and tender moments. It was not the life Ryder had imagined for himself all those lonely years. It was better. As summer faded into fall, Willa found herself feeling nostalgic. The children were growing so fast. Thomas was 10 now, already talking about the ranch and his future. Emma was 8, reading everything she could get her hands on. James was 4, wild and free. "Where did the time go?" she asked Ryder one evening. "Same place it always goes," he said, "but we have more ahead of us, lots more." And they did. Years of watching their children grow, of working the land, of facing challenges and celebrating victories together. Years of Willa crying and smiling, of Ryder holding her through nightmares and making her laugh during the day. In 1892, Thomas turned 12 and started courting a girl from town. Willa cried when she found out, happy tears mixed with the realization that her baby was growing up. "He is too young," she sobbed to Ryder. "He is 12. They are just talking. But soon he will be grown, and then Emma, and then James." Ryder held her, letting her cry. "We still have time, Willa, plenty of time." Time moved differently now, faster somehow. Emma started helping at the schoolhouse. James learned to ride. The ranch continued to prosper under Ryder's careful management. In the spring of 1894, disaster struck. A late freeze killed most of Willa's garden. She stood among the blackened plants, crying harder than she had in years. "We can replant," Ryder said, surveying the damage. "It is not the same," she sobbed. "I put so much work into it. And you will put work into it again." "That is what we do, Willa. We keep going." She looked at him, tears streaming. "How are you always so steady?" "Because I have you," he said simply. "You are my anchor." They replanted the garden together, the whole family working. By summer, new growth pushed through the soil. Not everything survived, but enough did. Enough always did. Thomas turned 15 in 1895. He was nearly as tall as Ryder now, with broad shoulders and strong hands. He worked the ranch with the confidence of someone twice his age. "He is a good son," Willa said, watching him work. "He learned from a good mother," Ryder replied. Emma was 13, beautiful and smart. Boys were starting to notice her, which made both Ryder and Willa nervous. They remembered being young, remembered how powerful those first feelings could be. James was 9, still getting into everything but with a good heart. He was the one who made them laugh most often, with his antics and his endless energy. One night after the children were asleep, Willa said, "I want to go back to Green River, to the place where you first saw me." "Why?" "To remember, to see how far we have come." They made the trip the following week, just the two of them. Thomas was old enough to watch his younger siblings for a day. Green River had grown in the 17 years since that first meeting. More buildings, more people. But the spot where Curtis's wagon had stood was still there, just an empty piece of street. Willa stood there, crying, remembering. I was so lost. I wanted to die, Ryder. Every moment was agony. But you did not die. You survived. Because of you. Because of you, he corrected. I just gave you space to heal. You did the actual work. She took his hand. We should go to the mercantile. I want to thank Sam Miller. They found Sam behind the counter, older and grayer but still sharp-eyed. He recognized them immediately, Ryder O'Brien. And Willa, is it? Willa O'Brien, she corrected, smiling through her tears. They talked for an hour, catching up. Sam remembered that day, remembered the crying woman and Ryder's impulsive purchase. I thought you were crazy, Sam admitted. Spending all that money on a woman who could not stop crying. But I am glad I was wrong. So am I, Ryder said, squeezing Willa's hand. On the ride home, Willa was quiet, tears flowing but expression thoughtful. What are you thinking about? Ryder asked. How many women are out there right now, lost like I was, being sold, being treated like property? Too many. I want to help them, she said suddenly. I do not know how, but I want to do something. They talked about it over the following weeks. Finally, they came up with a plan. They could not save everyone, but they could save some. They let it be known that any woman in need could come to their ranch, could work for room and board until she got on her feet. Over the years, several women took them up on the offer. Some stayed for weeks, others for months. Willa cried with each one, understanding their pain. Ryder made sure they were safe, that they had choices. It was not much, but it was something. And it helped Willa feel like her own suffering had purpose, had meaning. The turn of the century came. Thomas was 20 now, running much of the ranch. He had married the girl he started courting at 12, a sweet young woman named Sarah. They lived in a small house Ryder had helped Thomas build on the property. Emma was 18, teaching at the school. She had suitors but was in no hurry to marry, wanting to establish herself first. James was 14, still finding his way. He talked about seeing the world beyond Wyoming, which terrified Willa but made Ryder proud. Ryder himself was 54 now, his dark hair shot through with gray. Willa was 47, still beautiful, still crying every day. Time had marked them both, but it had been kind. One evening in 1902, they sat on the porch they had built 5 years earlier, watching the sun set over the mountains. Thomas and Sarah's baby, their first grandchild, slept in Willa's arms. We did good, Ryder said. Willa cried, but she was smiling. We did better than good. Look at what we built. Look at what you survived. She turned to him, tears streaming. I could not have done it without you. You gave me a reason to keep going when I had none. You gave me a reason to live instead of just exist, he countered. The baby stirred, making small sounds. Willa rocked her gently, still crying, and Ryder watched with a full heart. This was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of love. Not the lack of tears, but the ability to smile through them. In 1904, Emma married a banker from Green River. It was a big wedding, and Willa cried through the entire thing. Happy tears, she insisted, though they looked the same as always. James left home in 1905, heading to Denver with dreams of becoming a railroad man. Willa sobbed for days, but she let him go. You had to let children follow their own paths, no matter how much it hurt. Thomas and Sarah had 3 more children over the years, filling the ranch with young voices. Willa was an attentive grandmother, crying over every scraped knee and celebrating every milestone. The ranch continued to prosper. Ryder eventually handed over most operations to Thomas, though he still worked every day. He could not imagine doing anything else. In 1910, 32 years after their first meeting, Ryder developed a bad cough. He tried to ignore it, but Willa insisted he see the doctor in town. Pneumonia, the doctor said. He needs rest. Ryder hated being confined to bed, but Willa was relentless. She nursed him through it, crying constantly but never leaving his side. "I am not going anywhere," he promised her during one particularly hard night. "You better not," she sobbed. "I cannot do this without you." "Yes, you can. You are the strongest person I know." "Only because you made me strong." He recovered slowly, and by spring he was back on his feet, but the illness had scared them both, a reminder of their mortality. "We should write things down," Willa said one day, "our story, so the grandchildren know." They spent evenings that year working on it together. Willa crying as she remembered those early days, Ryder filling in details she had forgotten. It was not fancy writing, but it was honest. Their story, from beginning to wherever it would end. In 1912, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. The whole family gathered, children and grandchildren filling the house. Willa cried, of course, but she also laughed more than Ryder had heard in months. 30 years, she said that night, lying in his arms. "It feels like yesterday and forever at the same time." "Best 30 years of my life," he said. "Mine too. Even with all the crying," he chuckled. "Especially with all the crying. It is part of who you are, Willa. I would not change it. Good, because I do not think I could stop now if I tried." They made love that night, gentle and familiar, two people who knew every inch of each other. Afterwards, Willa cried into his chest and he held her until she fell asleep. The years rolled on, gentler now. Ryder was 66 in 1914, Willa 59. They moved slower, worked less, but they were still active, still engaged with life. James came home for a visit that summer, bringing a wife they had never met. Willa cried, overjoyed to have her youngest home again. "She cries a lot," James's wife whispered to him. "Always has," James said. "You get used to it." Emma and her husband had 2 children now, both girls. Thomas and Sarah had 5. The family had grown beyond what Ryder and Willa could have imagined. One fall evening in 1916, Ryder found Willa in the garden, crying as she pulled up the last of the season's vegetables. "What is wrong?" he asked, though he knew nothing was specifically wrong. "Nothing. Everything. I am just feeling everything all at once." He sat beside her in the dirt, his knees protesting. "Tell me." "I was just thinking about that day, when Curtis dragged me off the wagon. I wanted to die, Ryder. I prayed for it every night. I know. And now look at us. Look at this life. I have cried nearly every day for 38 years, but I would not change anything. Not even the crying," she laughed through her tears. "Well, maybe the crying. But everything else is perfect." They sat in the garden until dark, talking about everything and nothing. When they finally went inside, Ryder's knees were stiff and Willa's eyes were swollen, but they were happy. In the spring of 1918, Ryder turned 72. He was slowing down significantly now, spending more time in his chair than on his feet. It frustrated him, but Willa would not let him overdo it. "You worked hard your whole life," she said, crying as she brought him coffee. "Let Thomas handle it now. I feel useless." "You are not useless. You are resting. There is a difference." That summer they celebrated 40 years of marriage. The family gathered again, and Ryder looked around at the crowd and felt overwhelming gratitude. All of this, every person in this room, existed because he had been in the right place at the right time. Because he had seen a crying woman and decided to help. "Thank you," he whispered to Willa that night. "For what?" "For letting me save you, for saving me back, for this life." She cried, kissing him softly. "Thank you for being stubborn enough not to give up on me." In the fall of 1919, Ryder had a stroke. It was mild, but it left him weaker. Willa cried for days, terrified, but he recovered enough to still get around with a cane. "I am not done yet," he told her. "Good, because I am not ready to lose you." They had nurses visiting regularly now, checking on Ryder. The children came by often, bringing grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The house was rarely empty. In the summer of 1920, 42 years after their first meeting, Ryder and Willa sat on their porch, watching a thunderstorm roll across the valley. He held her hand, his grip weaker than it used to be but still steady. "You remember when I said I wanted to spend my life making you smile?" He asked, of course. "Did I succeed?" Willa looked at him, tears streaming down her weathered face, and smiled. "Every single day, even with the crying, especially with the crying. You taught me I could do both, cry and smile, grieve and love, hurt and heal." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the thunder. Ryder felt tired, bone-deep tired, but content. He had lived a good life, a full life, all because of the woman beside him. "I love you, Willa O'Brien," he said. "I love you too, Ryder O'Brien, always." Ryder died peacefully in his sleep 2 weeks later, Willa's hand in his. He was 74 years old. Willa cried, of course, but mixed with her grief was gratitude. They had been given 42 years together, which was more than either of them had expected. The funeral was well attended. Ryder had been respected in the community, known for his integrity and kindness. Willa stood at his grave, crying as she always had, but she was surrounded by family, by the legacy they had built together. After the funeral, Thomas approached his mother. "What will you do now?" "Keep living," she said simply. "That is what your father would want," and she did. Willa lived another 8 years, dying in her sleep at age 75 in 1928. 50 years after Ryder first saw her crying on that dusty street. 50 years of tears, but also 50 years of love and laughter and life. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch. The headstones were simple but bore an inscription that told their story: Ryder O'Brien, 1846–1920. He spent his life making her smile. Willa Vance O'Brien, 1853–1928. She cried every day but loved even more. Their children maintained the ranch, and their grandchildren continued the tradition of helping women in need. The story of the lonely cowboy and the crying woman became family legend, passed down through generations. Because sometimes the most profound love stories begin with an act of simple kindness. Sometimes saving someone else is actually saving yourself. And sometimes a lifetime is exactly long enough to turn tears into smiles, grief into joy, and strangers into soulmates. The ranch still stands today, a testament to two people who found each other when they needed it most, who built a life from broken pieces, who proved that love can bloom even in the harshest soil, that happiness can exist alongside sorrow, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is see someone who is hurting and decide to help. Ryder spent his life making Willa smile, but in truth, they saved each other. And that made all the difference.